She believed no one could ever love her. Until an untouchable man risked everything just to defend her. She had learned how to become invisible. Not overnight. Not by choice. It happened slowly, through sideways glances, half-finished conversations, smiles that never fully reached her, and the quiet way people talked around her instead of to her. Lena Harper knew what people saw when they looked at her. A woman who blended into the background. Too plain. Too quiet. Too cautious. The kind of woman men overlooked and women forgot. So she stopped expecting anything different. On most evenings she walked the same path through the city park just as the sun dipped low, the sky softening into gold and amber. It was the one place where she didn't feel judged. Trees didn't care how confident you were. Dogs didn't care how impressive your life looked on paper. She liked that. Her rescue dog, Maple, trotted happily beside her, ears flopping, tail wagging with unearned optimism. Maple believed the world was kind. Lena didn't correct her. That Tuesday evening felt like any other. The air was warm. The park was busy. Joggers passed. Couples laughed. A group of sharply dressed professionals lingered near the cafe tables, drinks in hand, voices loud with confidence. That's when she noticed him. He stood apart from the group, tall, composed, impossibly self-assured. Everything about him suggested distance. Custom tailoring, posture shaped by authority, the calm ease of someone used to being listened to. Ethan Cross. Even Lena knew the name. He was one of the city's most untouchable figures. A strategist whose decisions shaped billion-dollar mergers. A man featured in business magazines and whispered about at high-level conferences. People like him didn't accidentally cross paths with people like her. So she looked away. She always did. But Maple didn't. Before Lena could react, the leash tugged sharply as Maple bounded forward, enthusiasm outweighing training. At the same moment, a large, impeccably groomed dog broke free from Ethan's side. The two dogs collided in a flurry of fur, tails, and joyful chaos. Leashes tangled. Voices overlapped. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said immediately, already crouching to help. Lena froze. Up close he was worse, sharper, more present. His eyes held warmth but also an intelligence that felt intimidating. She became acutely aware of her plain jacket, her scuffed shoes, the way she always shrank in moments like this. "It's my fault," she said quickly, avoiding his gaze. She gets excited. He smiled, not polite, not dismissive. "Real. They're just saying hello," he replied. "Looks like they've decided for us." Their fingers brushed as they untangled the leashes. The contact sent a jolt through her she wasn't prepared for. She pulled back instinctively. "I'm Ethan," he added. "I know," Lena said before she could stop herself, then immediately wished she hadn't. Sorry? I'm Lena." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe amusement. From that moment on, something shifted. They began running into each other more often. Too often to be coincidence, though neither admitted it. Conversations started small, dogs, weather, routines, but slowly deepened. He never spoke down to her. Never rushed her. Never acted bored when she paused mid-sentence, searching for the right words. For the first time in years, Lena felt seen. But belief lagged behind feeling. In her mind there was always an expiration date. Men like Ethan didn't choose women like her. They didn't risk reputations or futures for someone invisible. So when he invited her to a community event in the park, a casual gathering, food trucks, music, she nearly said no. She went anyway. That night, everything unraveled. A man from Ethan's professional circle, loud, careless, cruel, noticed Lena standing beside him and laughed openly. "So this is who you've been disappearing with?" he said, voice sharp with mockery. "Didn't realize you were into charity cases now." The laughter around them was thin, uncomfortable, but present. Lena felt the ground disappear beneath her. Every fear she'd ever buried rose all at once. Invisible. Unlovable. A mistake. She waited for Ethan to deflect. To joke. To retreat. Instead he stepped forward. And in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "Apologize. Now." Silence fell. The man scoffed. "Relax. I'm just being honest." Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile. He simply said, "Then be honest somewhere else. Because you're not welcome here." People stared. Lena couldn't breathe. Ethan turned to her, not to shield himself, but to shield her. "Lena," he said gently, "you don't have to stay." But she was already stepping back. Years of self-doubt screamed louder than courage ever could. She left the park in tears, convinced she had just watched the inevitable happen, proof that she didn't belong in his world. That night, she decided something painful but familiar. She would disappear again. And this time she would make sure Ethan never had to risk anything for her again. She disappeared to protect him. But he refused to let her erase herself. Lena did not return to the park. Not the next day. Not the next week. Not even when the autumn air turned crisp and the trees shed their leaves like quiet confessions. She changed her routines with surgical precision. New walking hours, different streets, headphones and eyes down. She stopped checking her phone for messages she pretended not to want. She avoided places where memory lived. Because memory was dangerous. Memory whispered that for one brief moment, someone extraordinary had looked at her as if she mattered. And that was a hope she couldn't afford. Ethan noticed immediately. The park felt wrong without her. Maple's absence was obvious, but it was Lena's quiet presence he felt missing most. The way she listened, the way she laughed softly like she didn't want to take up space, the way she made him feel grounded in a world that rarely slowed down. He texted once. Then twice. Then stopped. Not because he didn't care, but because he understood what retreat looked like. He had seen it before in people who'd been taught their whole lives that visibility came with punishment. But Ethan Cross had never been good at accepting unfair conclusions. While Lena disappeared into smaller versions of her life, Ethan was being watched. The incident at the park didn't stay private. It never did in his world. Was it worth it? One colleague asked during a boardroom lunch, tone light but eyes sharp. Risking your image over some woman no one's heard of? Another murmured. He didn't answer. Because explaining Lena would have meant reducing her to justification, and she deserved more than that. Meanwhile, Lena's life shrank. At work, she kept her head down. When a client dismissed her idea and credited it to someone else moments later, she said nothing. When coworkers talked over her in meetings, she nodded and took notes. It was easier to disappear than to be humiliated again. But humiliation has a way of following those who already expect it. One afternoon, during a public presentation she'd helped design, her supervisor took full credit for her work. The room applauded. Her name wasn't mentioned once. She sat there, hands folded, heart pounding, thinking. This is my place. Quiet. Replaceable. Unseen. What she didn't know was that Ethan was in that room. He wasn't supposed to be. He'd been invited last minute as a potential investor. He recognized her immediately. Not because she stood out, but because he had been looking for her everywhere. She didn't see him at first. She was too busy shrinking. When applause faded, Ethan stood. Before we move on, he said calmly, his voice carrying authority without effort, I'd like to acknowledge the person responsible for the core strategy behind that presentation. The room stilled. Lena's supervisor stiffened. Ethan's eyes found her. Lena Harper, he said. Your work reframed the entire proposal. It's impressive. And it deserves recognition. A ripple of murmurs followed. Lena froze. Every instinct screamed to disappear, to deny, deflect, retreat. But something new stirred beneath the fear. Someone was standing up for her again. Publicly. After the meeting, she tried to leave without being seen. She didn't succeed. Running away seems to be your new hobby, Ethan said gently from behind. She turned, heart racing. You shouldn't be here, she said, panic and longing colliding. People are watching. I know, he replied simply. That's why I stayed. Silence stretched between them. I disappeared because I didn't want to be your problem, she finally said. Ethan's expression softened, not with pity but understanding. You were never a problem, he said. You were the only honest thing in a room full of masks. She shook her head. You don't get it. People like me don't get chosen. We get embarrassed. We get reminded of our place. Then your place is wrong, he said quietly. And I'm not willing to pretend otherwise. That was the moment Lena realized something terrifying. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't posturing. He was choosing. And choosing her meant consequences. His colleagues noticed. His reputation felt the tremor. Whispers turned sharper. But Ethan didn't step back. Because for the first time in years, Lena wasn't asking to be loved. She was being seen, and the world didn't know what to do with that. They tried to put her back in her place. So he exposed the truth they never expected. The backlash didn't come loudly at first. It arrived in whispers, in glances that lingered a moment too long, in invitations that quietly stopped appearing on Ethan Cross's calendar. He noticed it because he had spent years mastering the invisible language of power. People who once leaned in now leaned away. Colleagues who used to praise his instincts now asked cautious questions. And always, Lena's name hovered unspoken between them. She's distracting you, someone finally said during a private lunch. "You're risking too much," another warned. "You're letting sentiment cloud judgment," came the most common accusation. Ethan listened without interrupting. Then he stood, adjusted his jacket and replied evenly, "No. I'm letting integrity guide it." That answer unsettled them more than anger ever could. For Lena, the pressure was heavier. The recognition Ethan had given her at the presentation changed how people looked at her, but not all of it was positive. Suddenly, coworkers scrutinized her success. Every mistake felt magnified. Every achievement was questioned. "Lucky timing," someone muttered. "Connections matter," another said with a knowing smile. She heard it all. Old insecurities resurfaced with a vengeance. Maybe they were right. Maybe this attention wasn't about her talent. Maybe she was just borrowing relevance from a man who didn't need it. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, lights off, Maple curled beside her, staring at her phone. A message from Ethan blinked unread. She didn't open it. Because doubt is loudest when you're alone. The breaking point came a week later, public, deliberate, and cruel. At a major industry symposium, Lena was scheduled to present a segment she had personally developed. She had rehearsed for weeks. This was her chance to stand fully on her own. Minutes before she went on stage, her supervisor pulled her aside. "There's been a change," he said without meeting her eyes. "We're having someone else deliver your portion." Her stomach dropped. "But I created it." "Yes," he said flatly, "but this is a high-profile audience. We need someone more established." She knew what he meant. Someone safer. Someone who didn't invite controversy by existing too visibly near power. She watched from the audience as another person presented her work, her words, her ideas, while the room applauded. Lena felt herself fold inward. This was the price, she thought. This is what happens when you believe you're allowed to be seen. She left early, heart pounding with humiliation, certain she had finally proven everyone right. She didn't know Ethan had been watching. From the back of the hall he had seen the switch, had seen her absence, had seen her leave, and something inside him hardened. That evening he made a decision, one that would end speculation, invite scrutiny, and change everything. The next morning headlines broke. Ethan Cross announces strategic partnership, names new lead consultant. Lena read the article twice, hands trembling. Her name was there. Not as a favor. Not as a footnote. As the architect behind a new initiative, one he openly credited her for developing months earlier. Her phone rang immediately. Colleagues who once dismissed her suddenly praised her vision. Supervisors who had sidelined her now scrambled to congratulate her. People who whispered before now spoke carefully. The narrative had flipped. But Lena didn't feel triumphant. She felt exposed. She went to Ethan's office unannounced, pulse racing. "This will destroy you," she said the moment she stepped inside. "They'll say I only got this because of you." He met her gaze steadily. "They'll say it anyway," he replied. "The difference is, I'm done letting them decide what truth looks like." "You're risking your credibility," she whispered. He took a step closer. "No," he said softly. "I'm risking my comfort. And that's not the same thing." For the first time, Lena saw the cost written clearly on his face. This wasn't romantic fantasy. This was a man choosing principle over safety. Tears blurred her vision. "No one has ever done this for me," she admitted. Ethan shook his head gently. "They should have," he said. "You've earned it." Outside those walls, the reaction was explosive. Support. Backlash. Debate. But something irreversible had begun. The people who underestimated Lena had lost control of the story. And Ethan had made one thing painfully clear. He wasn't protecting her because she was weak. He was standing beside her because she was strong. When they tried to break her in public, the truth turned the spotlight on them instead. The fallout was immediate. What Ethan had done, what he had publicly declared, sent shockwaves through every circle that once treated him as untouchable. Board members requested emergency meetings. Industry leaders questioned his judgment. Commentators speculated, dissected, and judged. And at the center of it all stood Lena, calm on the outside, unraveling on the inside. She had gone from invisible to unavoidable in less than 48 hours. People who had never learned her name now used it in headlines. People who once ignored her emails now responded within minutes. But with attention came something far heavier than praise. Scrutiny. Every interview request felt like a trap. Every compliment carried a shadow of suspicion. Every success was quietly followed by the same unspoken question. Is she here because she deserves it, or because he chose her? The pressure finally broke her on a stage far larger than the park where her humiliation had first begun. The annual leadership forum was broadcast live, millions watching. Ethan and Lena were both scheduled to appear separately. That separation didn't last. During a panel discussion on ethics and influence, one of the speakers leaned forward and smiled thinly. "Let's address the elephant in the room," he said smoothly. "Mr. Cross, many believe your recent decisions were personal rather than professional." The audience leaned in. Lena felt her chest tighten from the sidelines. The man continued, eyes flicking briefly toward her. "Some might argue this sets a dangerous precedent, rewarding proximity over merit." The implication landed like a slap. Silence stretched. Ethan didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. "I agree," he said. "Which is why I'm grateful for the opportunity to clarify something." He turned slightly, gesturing toward Lena. "Ms. Harper led the foundational strategy behind 3 projects currently being discussed in this room, 2 of which generated record growth before anyone associated her name with mine." Murmurs rippled. He wasn't done. "Her work was overlooked, redirected, and presented by others until it became inconvenient to ignore. I didn't elevate her. I acknowledged her." The moderator shifted uncomfortably. "And for anyone suggesting this decision compromises my integrity," Ethan continued, "I'd argue the opposite. Integrity is recognizing talent, even when it challenges the comfort of people who benefit from silence." The room erupted. Applause. Tension. Cameras cut to Lena. Her hands were shaking, but she stood. Not because she was confident, but because she was tired of shrinking. She stepped onto the stage beside him. "I didn't ask to be chosen," she said into the microphone, voice unsteady but clear. "I asked to be heard." The room stilled. 4 years my work was passed over because I didn't look the part. Didn't sound confident enough. Didn't belong to the right circles. She paused, breath trembling. "But talent doesn't disappear just because it makes people uncomfortable." Silence broke into applause, real, sustained, undeniable. The same supervisors who once erased her credit now avoided eye contact. The same critics who mocked Ethan's choice now recalculated their stance. Instant karma doesn't always shout. Sometimes it exposes. After the forum, consequences fell swiftly. An internal investigation was launched into misattributed work. Supervisors who had taken credit were formally reprimanded. Contracts shifted. Roles changed. The system corrected itself, not out of kindness but necessity. That night, Lena sat alone in her apartment, lights dim, Maple asleep at her feet. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Are you okay?" She stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "I don't know who I am without fear." He responded immediately. "Then let's find out together." She leaned back, tears spilling freely, not from pain but from release. For the first time the world had seen her. And it hadn't looked away. She once believed love wasn't meant for her. Until he chose her in a world that finally watched. The world did not slow down after that night. If anything, it accelerated. Offers came in waves, consulting roles, speaking invitations, collaborations from firms that once wouldn't return Lena's emails. Her name was no longer followed by silence but by expectation. And expectation was heavy. For days, she moved through her life in a strange haze, unsure whether she was walking toward something real or simply standing in the afterglow of a moment that would fade as quickly as it arrived. She had spent so long believing love, respect, and recognition were things given to other people. People louder, bolder, more polished. Not her. Not the woman who learned to disappear to survive. Ethan watched her carefully. He didn't push. Didn't claim victory. Didn't act like he had rescued her. Because he hadn't. She had stood on that stage herself. One evening, after the noise finally quieted, he invited her somewhere simple. No cameras, no audience, no stakes. The same park. The same path. The same fading light between the trees. Maple and his dog ran ahead, unaware they were witnesses to something fragile and important. They walked in silence at first. Then Lena stopped. "I need to know something," she said, voice steady but eyes searching. "Why didn't you walk away when it got complicated?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at her the way he always had, like she mattered even when no one else was watching. "Because walking away would have been easier," he said finally. "And I've had enough of easy." She swallowed. "I spent most of my life believing I was unlovable," she admitted. "Not broken. Not tragic. Just forgettable." He stepped closer, careful, intentional. "You were never forgettable," he said. "You were surrounded by people who benefited from you believing that." Her breath caught. "And you?" she asked quietly. What do you want now? Ethan didn't hesitate. I want a life where I don't trade truth for approval, he said. And I want it with you, if you choose me. Not because I risked something. Not because the world is clapping. Only if you want this. For the first time, Lena didn't look down. She didn't shrink. She didn't apologize for existing. She stepped forward. I want to be loved without having to disappear first, she said. Ethan smiled, not triumphant, not relieved. Just honest. Then stay, he said. All of you. The weeks that followed rewrote more than headlines. Lena left her old job on her own terms, not in shame but in clarity. She built a role shaped around her talent, her voice, her vision. When she spoke now, people listened. Not because of Ethan, but because she had finally learned to stand. And Ethan? He lost nothing that mattered. Those who distanced themselves revealed their values. Those who stayed proved their worth. His reputation didn't crumble, it evolved. People began to associate his name not just with power but with principle. And Lena realized something quietly profound. Love hadn't made her visible. Visibility hadn't made her worthy. She had always been worthy. Love simply met her where she finally stood. One evening, months later, as they watched the city lights flicker on from her balcony, Ethan brushed his thumb over her hand. You know, he said softly, the world thinks I risked everything for you. She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. They don't understand, she replied. You didn't risk everything. He looked at her. You chose the one thing that mattered. She closed her eyes, feeling safe, not because someone saved her, but because she no longer needed saving.